Yeah, let's go. I'm unstoppable, do the impossible. I'm irresponsible, yet I'm phenomenal. I got an arsenal, I'm dropping bombs, you know. No, I'm not stopping, no. Conquer the obstacle. To the top, here I go, think I'm chosen to be the king of rock, think the people have spoken. I can hear the tick-tock of the clock, I'm in motion. So now I'm gonna pop, causing all this commotion.
Yeah, sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable. Yeah, ready to go, man, lock and load. That's right, I swear to God that I could drop you, bro. Yeah, I got a shot and I ain't stopping, no. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable. Yeah, let's go. I don't care what they all say, I'ma do this thing my way. Let's go. Been grinding hard on it all day. Okay. We work hard, then we all play. Yeah. I'm addicted to the grind, man. That's right. So I refuse to waste time, man. Yeah. One day it all will be fine, man. Let's go. Gotta commit to the climb. You know man. We're back with the Guinness, setting records every minute, every track. In addiction to the fact that we're winning, still we lack. Something's missing, need a track that is hitting, making racks, making millions. Oh, yeah. You ask, that's the mission. Yeah. I don't waste time, no, I make time. All these people wanna hate, fine, I'ma make mine. While you sitting there complaining, I'll be training. While you sitting there just waiting, I'm creating. Yeah, sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable. Yeah, ready to go, man, lock and load. That's right, I swear to God that I could drop you, bro. Yeah, I got a shot and I ain't stopping, no. That's how I know that I'm unstoppable.
Been enough to think.
That's how I know that I'm unstoppable.
I love that beat. All right, so here's the deal. We are going to be doing a little bit of fun here. Not too much fun. I don't want to scare people.
Searching for.
But we're going to have a little fun. We're going to watch a little bit of the Kip Davis stuff going on. I think I messed up the link. Oh well, it doesn't matter. Nobody cares but me anyway. We're going to watch some Kip Davis. We're gonna start off with inspiring philosophy, and then we're gonna move on to the two things from Sam Sosa. Sweetheart, I can't talk. You're bothering me. I know, you're distracting me. From San Sosa, Suna Sosa, Sana Siza, Sina Sama Sama Suma. We're gonna watch his things. We're gonna watch pieces, of course. You know how it goes. All right, let's do this. Let's start off with El Philosophy Inspiria. It's live stream Inception.
Hold on, I gotta finish crying. I get it all out. I have a lot of tears for this. All right, there we go. That's enough. Welcome everyone. I am so sad, so stressed out. I am holding back tears as we speak. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Anyway, welcome.
Thanks, Michael. I'm spilling my coffee. I'm laughing so hard at this.
How dare you laugh at me when I'm crying? Not my heart and soul. Well, welcome back to the channel, everyone. Welcome back to the channel, Dr. Falk. It's so good to have you back. Last time you were here, you caused a lot of trouble. In fact, you ruined Kip Davis's watch party. How dare
Oh
you?
no! Oh,
How dare you, sir?
I feel
How dare you?
so bad about that.
Oh, half the watch party, the moment you came on the screen, they immediately clutched their pearls, jumped on their high horses, and rode all the way back to their ivory towers. How dare you? So, yeah, we're back.
I seem to have that effect on people.
You certainly do. So, for those who want to know what's going on today, many moons ago, Gavin Ortland and I had a conversation about the Exodus and Conquest, and it really triggered some atheists. They did a 90-minute response on Apologia's channel. And so Dr. Falk and I responded, well, that really set them off. And they're now uploading hours.
9 hours. 9 hours.
How triggered do you have to be about this? And they're not even done. They're not even
They're
done.
not done. No. What?
Like,
Oh, what an enormous waste of time. I mean, couldn't these people think of better things to do with 9 hours?
yeah, I
don't
don't
like
know.
that attitude there.
I've been loving it.
I mean, I can think of things I'd rather do than 9 hours of responding to Kip. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, a video game, my laundry, write a book, write a peer review article. Imagine that.
So they uploaded one response to Rationality Rules channel. And apparently they're going to do like 3 or 4 more, just dissecting that live stream we did. And like, they spent half the time, for example, like trying to dissect one sentence that I made in like off the cuff in my conversation with Gavin and accused.
Oh, I love the psychologizing.
Oh my God.
I have a friend who's a professor of psychology. And I told him about this, and he just couldn't stop laughing. He thought this was the most ridiculous thing he's heard.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Now, here's what we're gonna do, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna look at their video. There's not a lot of substance.
Sweetheart,
There's
I
like
need
they
to
spend
work.
like most of like the first hour trying very hard to poison the well and just prime their audience to think that we have no integrity, that we're these evil, bad apologists. We're gonna skip over most of that because I don't care. If you actually sit through that whole thing and agree with it all and love it, you must really hate me and Dr. Falk because like I don't have time to care that much about people. So most of what we're going to do is going to address the substance, and we'll hit some of the ridiculous comments just to show you what it's like.
We're going to do 5-minute intervals. We're going to let it play for 5 minutes and do 5-minute intervals. You know how this goes.
But if when they do the later responses, we may not do that much with it. I might go through it and we may like just try to hit the substance part. So when they respond to anything regarding our model of the Exodus and Conquest, we will look at that. When they try to control the narrative, when they hit minor issues that are, like when they hit minor issues like, are the
very minor issues.
Yeah. Like when did the Amorites started moving south? Like that's not an important issue. Or like Debone or Heshbone, these kinds of
Or the whole interpretation of say reading a modern textbook.
Yeah. So
What?
when they keep going on this, like we are living so rent free in their head for months. I had forgotten about
Yeah.
it until they had mentioned something in September. I was like, really? They're still okay, fine, whatever. So when they push,
Not subject matter experts. This is a way to gaslight your audience into saying whatever is convenient at the time.
yeah, and it's
It's a lie of convenience is what it is.
it's that's what bothered me the most is like, listen, you guys set yourself as subject matter experts, so we held you to that scrutiny. Okay, I admit I'm not a subject matter expert. That's one of the reasons I brought you on. Oh, Apologia wants to bring on subject matter experts. Fair enough, let's do it, folks. And so that was what we were going on. Now they're claiming we're like,
When it comes to the Egyptian 18th, 19th dynasty, I'm a subject matter expert. That it happens to coincide with the late Bronze Age.
yeah,
So I am a de facto late Bronze Age expert as well.
yeah, and like,
That's my focus of research. It's always been my focus of research.
yeah, and like I wouldn't listen. We're not going to pretend we're perfect. Or we get everything. I was
You got bad choice in friends, dude.
yeah. So he's just like pretending Mike's always been so mean to me. He's hated me. It's like what fantasy world are you just like pretending? I was
Once. And I nearly vomited in my mouth. It was just like, what? You got bad choice in friends, dude.
just like he's just lying to his audience. I tried very hard to be nice to him, show him respect, and all he ever did was just
I remember when you called him a friend once, and I nearly vomited in my mouth. It was just like, what? You got bad choice in friends, dude.
yeah. See, we're
This is
angry.
not
Can't control
that's not
themselves. It's like
attractive.
the actions.
This video was one big projection.
Yes, it was. Oh.
It was one big to have a voice in the conversation.
I'm gonna be really blunt. This is not making either of these two gentlemen look good.
Yeah, and we
You and I think everyone should have a voice in the conversation.
absolutely.
And then
I think everybody's allowed to have an opinion, and everyone's allowed to express that opinion. But when the big boys come to play, if you can't play with the big boys, you shouldn't be at the table. And if you get trounced, you get trounced. And sorry, Michael, but your argument for the Exodus being real. We're going to watch a little bit of Tim Staples in a little bit before we go to the San Sosa video. Because unfortunately, Tim Staples plays a little bit of this game. Not this mockery, fake laugh stuff, but he plays a little bit of this game with Adam and Eve. So we're going to do that in a little bit. But we're going to start off with these two people if they ever get to a point.
let the best ideas win. They don't
never.
Yeah, but both of you don't have the best ideas. Like, that's just, I'm being blunt. I like you, Michael Jones. I've referenced your channel a lot. I think you're way more honest than someone like Cameron Bertuzzi. And you're not a Catholic. I am a Catholic, and I'm saying that you're way more honest of an interlocutor than Cameron Bertuzzi. But this ain't it, man. I know you and David Wood are friends. I know you and David Wood used to have a more similar edge. But yeah, the facts are not on your side.
They don't share that view. They want to censor dissident voices.
We would never say, if you're consistently getting the scholarship wrong, this should disqualify you from the conversation.
Yeah.
Irritable?
But you don't see that as a problem? I've gotten a lot of stuff wrong in my time doing apologetics and anti-apologetics, and before that, just talking on YouTube when I was just doing book reviews. I originally, when I started talking the Bible, tried to do the Bible as a book review. And it just made everyone mad because I was doing Bible as literature and people were freaking out because they didn't understand what I was doing. They totally freaked out on me. And I still to this day cannot get certain Christians on my channel because I did that. I'm sorry, but the Bible's a book. Like, whether you take it as a whole anthology or you take individual books, it's literature, man. Human beings wrote it. It's not denying inspiration. It's not denying the hand of God. It's not denying the breath of God. Whatever. Human beings are the people who wrote the Bible, compiled the Bible, all of that. All of that's human. Every stage of the Bible had a human being on it. And human beings make mistakes. There are anachronisms. There are points of friction. There are different takes on different stories. There are inferences to other stories that are older than the Bible or the specific book that's being talked about.
Yeah. Do you want to be charitable or do you want to be hypocrites? Pick one.
Yeah. They're happy with being hypocrites.
Fortunately,
they have no reflection.
Stop the ad hominem attacks. Stop the character assassination stuff. Like, it's just so... It's below you. We're Christians. Don't do that.
Can see what I'm trying to get at here. So here's an example of a Bailey.
By the way, I don't like this guy. I like this guy. But everything that he said up for the last 30 minutes has really, really made him look bad and made Christians look bad.
Should abolish all public education because it's completely ineffective and a waste of time. So suppose I say that, right? Big statement. And then Josh comes along and goes, receipts, please. What's going on? Tell me what's going on. And then I defend, and I say, I move from that spot to the spot that I can actually defend. And I go, look, I'm just saying that there are some inefficiencies in public education that could be improved. See, the way that I see it is that Michael said that scholars are changing their minds. That's his controversial Bailey. And yet when pressed, he's moved with David to saying that conservative scholars and maximalist scholars are in favor of a historical account.
Okay. So let's be clear. That is not what I said. And I will just play the clip from Gavin's stream. But I'll say it again. What I said in the stream off the cuff was, it seems to be shifting more in the direction of historicity. It seems to be moving away from the old Deaver or Finkelstein idea that this was all mythology written later. Now here's a line I say.
So I watched that video. I didn't see any proof. I didn't see anything to persuade me to say that the Exodus was literal, as described in the Bible. And I definitely didn't see anything in there to make me think that the conquest of Canaan happened the way the Bible describes it. And I didn't see anything in there to prove to me that the Judges period is historically accurate. And I didn't see anything in there to show me that Noah's Ark existed. I didn't see anything in there to show me Adam and Eve were a literal Adam and Eve. Let's forget about all the historical inaccuracies and anachronisms for just a second. And let's talk language. You cannot have Jewish people, Semitic language people, Hebrew people before Hebrew existed. That makes absolutely no sense. You can't have people with Jewish names before a Jewish language exists. Now, Jewish names that are inspired from other languages, sure. Names that begin to sound Jewish as the Jewish language begins to develop, yes. A whole culture of Jewish names and Jewish name places before the language existed? No. So even if you want to say the events took place the way described, the names of the people wouldn't be the same, and the names of the locations wouldn't be the same. If we talk chronology, the people writing the story and using the past tense, even if you want to say they're around at the very end of the story, if the story takes 1,000 years, they weren't around in the first 1,000 or the first 900 years of that story. This is just common sense, man.
Okay, right after this, I go on to say, now that still seems to be the consensus, especially among critical scholars for sure. Then I make a different claim. I say, but the evidence overwhelmingly supports an historical conquest. And I will just put that up here so you can see exactly what I said when Gavin asked me the question.
Did the conquest of Canaan actually happen? What is the overall state of scholarship on a question like that?
Well, it seems to be shifting more in the direction of historicity. It definitely seems to be moving away from the old Deaver or Finkelstein idea that.
So what does shifting mean? Does that mean like there's two more legitimate guys that think so? Or does that mean a majority think so? No. So the majority still is on the other side. So the shift could be a fart. It doesn't have to be a gust of wind.
This was all mythology written later. Now, that still seems to be the consensus, especially among critical scholars for sure. But the evidence overwhelmingly supports an historical conquest.
Okay.
Again, it does not. If it did, I'd be I'm not a cheerleader, but I'd be cheering that. I'd be happy about it if it did. I'd be saying that to everybody if it did. But the actual evidence does not support an actual conquest. The actual evidence that we actually have, not the theoretical evidence that we don't have that might exist.
Dr. Falk, did I say because of the overwhelming amount of evidence, all scholars are moving more towards historicity?
No, you didn't.
So the ironic thing is they've accused me of a fallacy and they're strawmanning me. So, and you guys, again, audience, you can see the words I said. Did I say things?
Yeah, I can see the stupid thing you said, yes. Do you want to go back and hear it?
Especially among critical scholars for sure. This was historicity.
Scholarship on a question like that.
Well, it seems to be shifting more
Well, it seems to be shifting more
in the direction of historicity.
in the direction of historicity.
It definitely seems to be moving away from the old Deaver or Finkelstein idea that
It definitely seems to be shifting away from the old Deaver or Finkelstein idea.
this was all mythology written later.
That this was all mythology written later.
Now, that still seems to be the consensus, especially
No, that seems to still be the consensus,
among critical scholars for sure.
especially
the-
among critical scholars for sure. But wait, you mess up.
Evidence overwhelmingly supports an historical
But the evidence overwhelmingly supports
conquest.
Okay.
a conquest,
Dr.
historical conquest. Once you say, but everything you said firsthand no longer counts. Cells 101. You then go further into fallacy land when you say, but the evidence does overwhelmingly support a historical conquest. Would you like to play a little game with me? How to make that sentence true? There's multiple ways to do it. In my opinion, the evidence does support a historical conquest. Now, we're not lying, but we also no longer have an appeal to authority. The evidence that seems to be coming up that has yet to be overwhelming. There is evidence out there that this could be a historical account. Again, not lying. Let's try one more. Let's do one more. Let's see. How could we make this not a fallacy? The evidence that I have seen has convinced me that it is a historical event. Congratulations. But you didn't say that. What did you say?
Or Finkelstein idea that this was all mythology written later. Now, that still seems to be the consensus, especially among critical scholars for sure. But the evidence overwhelmingly supports an historical conquest.
Okay.
But the evidence overwhelmingly supports a historical conquest. Do you not hear what you said?
Dr. Falk, did I say because of the overwhelming amount of of evidence, all scholars are moving more towards historicity?
No, you didn't.
So the ironic thing is they've accused me of a fallacy and they're straw manning me. So,
but you did. You did a fallacy. You did a leap in logic. You were missing the words. You were missing the conditionals that make your statement true. Do you speak English? Have you spoken English before? Have you been speaking English for a long time? My wife is only been speaking English for 7 years, and even she's better at this than you.
oh, and you guys, again, audience, you can see the words I said. Did I say things like, oh, the overwhelming amount of evidence is moving scholars forward? They spend so much time dissecting this one sentence when they could have just asked me. Now, I'll admit, when I'm in a live stream, I'll say things off the cuff. I don't word things the best.
Nobody does. It was worded poorly.
It's a live stream. When you're live, you don't have a script. You're not.
In Dadpool, because I was like, I was too mean to you. I'm sorry. You know, it's like, you're not going to be perfect at this, but like, at least try to be charitable. Like, I don't know.
1980s. I mean, I was taught, my professor, I did an archaeology class in the late 1980s.
My dad's. Hey, Zach. Actually, you're not joining very late. I'm going to go a little long today, so you're fine. We're still in the beginning. We're doing 5-minute jumps on this video. But what I was going to say is that my dad took an archaeology class and an anthropology class in the 1930s, 60s. I don't know exactly when. My dad doesn't know shit about archaeology. So what you just said doesn't help. I just got here. Is the claim that the critical scholars are overlooking the evidence? No. The problem is Michael Jones is being arrogant, and he misspoke mildly. He had a mild misspeak, and the critical scholars made too much hay out of it. And instead of addressing the issue, Michael Jones is focusing on ad hominem, whatever. He's focusing on insults, and that doesn't work. So Kip Davis is not going to respond to this video. So I am. That's where we're at.
My professor
Hi,
was
Eric.
Paul Mosca, who was a leading figure in biblical archaeology at the time.
So we're going to go from here, then we're going to go to Catholic Answers and watch Tim Staples make a similar error with Adam and Eve, and I'm going to explain that. And then we're going to go into the San Sosa videos. We're going to do the first one and the second one. Sana, whatever how you want to pronounce his name, he's very long-winded and he's very dry. So while we're going to be doing 5-minute jumps on this one, we're going to be doing 10-minute jumps for the other one. Oh, yeah. Yes. So I have a more nuanced view on the ahistorical aspects of biblical narrative, which is, I think they're inspired by either real events or by the narrative that was believed at the time. So I don't think that the biblical scholars are lying when they tell a propagandistic tale, but they don't have the evidence to back up their tale because no one has the evidence. And at that time, that isn't how research was done. If you look at how Herodotus did his research, he went to different temples and different shrines and took different people's accounting of different events, and then he gives each different version, and then he gives his own version, which is neat and interesting. But some of the stuff that he said clearly didn't happen. That doesn't mean that he's lying. It's the facts as they stood in ancient times. Now, we might be arrogant and think we have a better understanding of what actually happened than the people who were closer to the time period that they're reporting. And we might be right. But that doesn't mean that they didn't think they were also correct. So, again, that's a different approach than anyone here playing this game is playing. Hence, I'm commenting because I have a different approach. Otherwise, what am I adding?
And I remember asking him in the class, well, is anything in the Bible actually true? And he said to me, there is not a single reliable thing in the Bible.
And I've heard scholars and atheists and anti-theists say that before. So what? Brush it off. Why are you airing grievances on a supposed academic stream?
This is one of the reasons the thumbnail says gaslighting. So I just want to play this, and then we'll jump to see what Josh says in the Rationality Roll stream, and you can see it for yourselves.
Our conservative estimates that Michael mentioned here, 25,000 people, 100 to 200,000 people. These are still enormous numbers, and not...
So, hold on. I just watched the Vince McMahon miniseries on Netflix. And I think it's WrestleMania 3. And the number keeps getting bigger. It's 100,000. It's 199,000. It's 200,000. And they'll give you an exact number and everything. The actual number, because based on the number of seats that the stadium, the Silverdome could hold, is more like 35,000. Does it mean that they were lying? Does it mean that the Silverdome WrestleMania never happened? No, it happened. It was advertised as Hogan fighting Andre Giant for the first time. He had fought Andre Giant many, many times. But if we report that it said it's him fighting him for the first time, and that's how they reported it, are we lying? No, that's how it was sold. You're reporting on propaganda, and you're coming up with a narrative. Does anyone know if Falk is a Christian of some sort? I'm not sure. I know that the very few things I've seen on him has critical scholars and other, I'm going to say Egyptologists, but that might be the wrong word, other archaeologists that are on YouTube not taking him seriously. And I used to be subscribed to way more Egyptologists and archaeologists. There was one just because she was super beautiful, just to be very blunt. But I also happen to like this kind of material.
something that would have been missed by the many observers in Egypt and in Canaan. We have hundreds upon hundreds of letters written by Canaanite kings in the 13th century BCE from the repository at Amarna. And no one ever mentions the arrival of an invading horde of 20,000 people from Egypt. We somehow have a report of...
So the problem
I don't
is
see how
that
that's funny.
anyone who studied this knows the Amarna letters are not relevant for the 13th century Exodus because they're a century apart.
Yeah.
And we pointed this out. Now, they got mad about this, and Kip, or
so
Josh,
mad. So mad.
Josh is going to try to do damage control and claim...
But it doesn't matter. There's no evidence, period, for a mass exodus outside of the Bible. Our Bible is our one data point. We have one data point, one thing that's on our side, and it's the thing that we're referencing. There is more historical evidence for the Great Deluge, which we all know is fictional. There's more evidence for the Minotaur. I mean,
well, he just misspoke.
Something like that. And it's interesting to me, we'll get to it. I think, I'm not sure actually if it's one of the clips. There's a part here, of course, where they hammer Kip.
Hammer time.
And from the beginning, they're planning on hammering Kip about this, saying, how did you do it? 13th century instead of 1300s?
1300.
yeah, but where's the other letters from any other period corroborating the Exodus story? Where's any other archaeological evidence corroborating the Exodus story? There are evidences of smaller, minor exoduses. Multiple. Yes, it can. So,
yeah.
And I mean, it's like this piece of chum in the water that's circling around. They're getting, oh, I can't wait till we get to high, you know. And Michael makes the like 2 minutes into this meaty flesh, and he says, I don't even know something like the 1200s. I mean, 12.
the obnoxiousness really does hurt their argument.
And it just gone. Just to move right on by it. And to me, you know, I may have made a recording of it, may have put both of them together, may have sent it to our group chat with Kip and Dan McClellan and said, you know, who makes a mistake like that?
Okay, well, it's great that they admit they have this echo chamber they like to gossip in and actually have the time to make edit clips for it. But like,
they got more time than I do.
We will. We definitely will. I will be the first to say it. We'll get to that. Why can't you do the same? Stop gaslighting us and pretending you just misspoke. You want to spend like an hour dissecting a single sentence or two.
Problem with consensus scholarship is it just takes a random opinion and say, oh, that's this scholar put his mark on it. Therefore, consensus.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to, as a scholar, be able to evaluate your sources. You know, a scholar would read this in Freeman, a person who's really up on their archaeology of Hatzor would read this and go, what is Friedman talking about?
I think maybe he's going on the early date. He's assuming that, and then Barak and Deborah would date to maybe later. I'm just trying to be charitable here. Like maybe that's
Barak and Deborah is Iron Age 1.
Was taken out of context. We apologize. This is a minor issue in the larger picture of the whole thing.
Yeah,
for a minor issue, you've been going on and on about it for an hour.
It doesn't matter.
No, it's one of those
We're not
things
consensus scholars anyway.
Yeah.
For us, it doesn't matter. Page 8 equates it with the Amorites. Liverani on page 117 quotes Israel, volume 2, page 140 that says the Amaru are the Amorites. Even Aharoni in his atlas on page 26 says that the Amaru are the Amorites. And Dr. Falk's wrong. That's all this is.
Yeah, let's get back to
that's
more
all
of
that is.
Yeah, let's jump back in and hear more of that.
I suspect Falk is interpreting as the Amorites.
You sure are.
Not something.
Sure am, because that's the consensus.
So Amudu was a buffer kingdom that was established in the north, and it seems I'm not totally clear on this, but it seems like the Amudu kingdom was maybe established in an effort to protect Egyptian interests in Canaan from the Hittites, who were in Turkey and Anatolia. So during the reign of Amenhotep III, the Amudu began to take military actions in the small area sort of surrounding their kingdom that interfered with Egyptian control. And the king of Amudu, Azidu, ignored repeated summons to appear before Pharaoh in Egypt to explain himself. So we have a bunch.
For those of us who play Total War, remember all this stuff when you're playing Pharaoh.
Of letters, particularly from the king of Byblos. His name is Rib-Hadi, and most of his letters are complaining about what the Amudu are doing in his area, and he's telling the pharaoh that they're rallying people, they're rallying these brigands known as the Apidu, and he's worried that their plan is basically to rebel against Egypt. So yeah, where was I? So Azidu is actually he ignores repeated summons to come and appear before Pharaoh in Egypt to explain himself.
Defeated the Amorite kings at Hebron, Yarmouth, Lachish, Eglon, Jerusalem. Okay?
And this establishes that Joshua, but they don't need that because they say the default position is it happened. Now, Heshbon, well, we don't have the material to you can't.
Well, that's a presupposition, which is problematic.
Build an argument against it so it continues to stand true. And that's not how this works.
What?
Okay, Josh, we have never made the case that the Exodus is.
Eric says Dr. Falk seems like an interesting personality, though, but him and IP don't seem to ever show why their points demand we agree with them. I agree, and that was part of the problem with the original video. I did watch the original. Actually, I watched the original 2 videos. I watched Gavin Ortland interview, and then I watched the response to the last video that Michael Jones did, and I watched another one as well. In watching his responses and watching his argumentation, he's not giving any proofs. He just says there's an abundance of evidence and then proceeds to give unrelated evidence to the claim. I don't think anyone outside of mythicists and anti-theists are going to argue that there were never an Israeli people or never a Hebrew people. So him showing that Hebrew people existed doesn't prove the Exodus happened. Him showing that there were slave revolts in Egypt doesn't prove that those slave revolts were the Hebrew people. Him showing that Hebrew slaves escaped doesn't prove that the Exodus happened, because these minor exodus, exodi, these minor exodus are not thousands and thousands of people. The war bands with a D that are the cousins of the Canaanites, well, that matches what we would call the Israeli conquest, doesn't show that the Hebrews are those people. It just shows that the cousins of the Canaanites are those people, unless we're calling the Hebrews the Canaanites' cousins, which then makes their origin from the Canaanites, not their origin from Egypt. Which again is fine, because they're supposed to be cousins anyway in the Bible, but you're mixing narratives. So you can have multiple sources and multiple histories that coincide and coalesce together into what we now know as the Exodus, which is what I argue. But you're not arguing that, Michael or David. You're arguing that it's literally what it says in the Bible, when there's no evidence of that. So unless you're going to say the Exodus took place over, 200 years, 300 years, okay, but then that's not the Exodus in the Bible. It's a different Exodus. It's the Exodus in your mind. It's not the Exodus that's being reported in the narrative.
is just the default position. We did a 3-part documentary series that's over 2 hours long, presenting evidence for this model for our case. We've never said, if we thought the Exodus was just the default position,
we might watch that tomorrow if we do a show tomorrow. I don't know. It's going to be Halloween, and my dad loves Halloween, and with his Alzheimer's, I have to be with him while it's giving out candy. I don't want him walking off with any group. So, but maybe if we have time, we'll if I have time after the trick or treaters leave, maybe we'll watch a little bit of Michael Jones' video on it.
we would never have done that or felt we had to present evidence for our case.
We would have been playing video games instead.
Yeah, we're not presuppositionalists. You guys were the ones that...
The Bryson response. You know,
if you're not presuppositionalist, why are you using a presuppositional argument? I mean, I believe you that you're not a presuppositionalist. Is one of the reasons why I watch you. But you're using a presuppositional position. So which one is it? I'm not asking for complete consistency. I'm okay with you playing the hypocrite, if you will. But if you're going to do so, cop to it and don't make this response video in this manner.
It's like we're consistently wrong on the evidence, but we hate Dr. Falk.
Well, let's go to the... Look, again, love the conversation with Maggie Bryson. I thought it was great. I thought it was educational. Didn't agree with everything she had to say.
And I think it was her that I watched on History Valley. And I think we watched a portion of that here on this channel. She is not supporting their view. Do I let her back in? She's going to meow. She's going to jump on my lap. She's going to distract. Wow. Do you hear that? Can you hear the knocking? All right. Okay. Yes. Come in. Come on. Okay.
Say, I mean, but I mean, like, if they were just acting like this, instead of their, again, thinking the way Kip's acting, we wouldn't have any problems. But they bring up the bone because, again, I want to play this clip because it shows how Kip and Josh have lost the narrative and they're making arguments that we never made, or they're responding to arguments we never made. So let's just play this. And I think this is the last clip I want to play.
What interpretive model best accounts for these data points? It's, all right, we have our interpretive model. Now, let's get these data points. How can they fit into our interpretive model, right? And if, well, this one doesn't seem to work. Like the debone thing, just in case anybody doesn't, like, isn't catching why this is relevant, is that there are lots of sites in Transjordan and elsewhere that they either have meager late Bronze Age material culture or none that we have found. And so debone falls into that category. And so if it's supposed to be this major site that's conquered, on its face, that's problematic.
Do you have to believe in a historical United Kingdom as well within their model of Hebrew history? So I think that's extremely relevant, Eric. I don't think that's a small issue. It's why in a lot of these conversations, I'm siding with Kip and Dr. Bowen over, let's say, Tim Staples and Trent Horn or Gavin Ortlund. The pre-exile United Kingdom might be a complete creation of post-exile Hebrews. It may not have ever been a thing. Or the peace treaties and what have you between the two kingdoms may lend credence to a type of United Kingdom, but not an actual United Kingdom. So that doesn't mean that it can't be true. It just means we don't have data to prove it yet. And if we never have that data, then we never have that data. That doesn't mean we're not free to believe it as Christians. I'm free to believe whatever I want to believe. But if you're going to argue for its historicity or for its actuality, you need proof. And if you don't have proof, don't argue for it. Don't argue for it as a historical event. Say, hey, look, this is what I believe. We don't have any way to prove it. The only data point that we have that's on our side is the Bible. And that's okay with me. That's enough for me. It's enough for me that the Bible says it for it to be true. And leave it at that. But that's not what these people are doing. I don't know if that means she agrees or not.
And so the response here, of course, is that, well, yeah, the archaeology might not
Her name's
be
Squish,
there.
by the
Maybe
way.
there's, secondary and tertiary deposits that were then,
He's so long-winded.
whatever, and that's why we don't have them. Fine. But as it stands, right, we can't build the case
There it is.
with the archaeology.
Okay,
Which is my point.
Josh. Bulk and I never built a case from the archaeology of Debone for the
It is, Eric says, it is some of the most fascinating part of Israel Judaite history in the archaeology debate. So I thought to bring it up. No, it's a great point. I mean, that is my point. I think that's, if you will, that's even in a way Dr. Joshua Bowen's point. I don't know if it's Dr. Kipp's point, but it might be, which is we don't have the evidence to back it up. So it could be fictitious. We're allowed to speculate that. Now, as Christians who take the Bible as the Word of God, when there's doubt, we side with the Bible. That's fine, but that's a presupposition. We're presuming that the Bible is correct.
You were the ones in the Apologia video that presented Debone as a smoking gun against the Exodus. But now in this big conversation with Maggie Bryson, you keep presenting it as if we presented Debone as a smoking gun for the Exodus. That's not what happened. You lost the plot. The plot was you brought up Debone as if it was a problem, and all we did was show that, no, it isn't a problem because, hey, we have some Egyptian texts that seem to speak of Debone existing. So...
Okay, so we're going to move on to Tim Staples, and then we're going to get into some of the Sosa stuff. Are you ready? Let's watch some Catholics saying something stupid.
Really committed by our first parents. And then there's a...
My granddaughter is being told in her religion class that Adam and Eve were not real people.
In her religion class, in a Catholic church or Catholic school. So a Catholic priest or a Catholic teacher is telling her that Adam and Eve might not have been real.
People.
Ouch.
And this bothers me greatly, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about it.
Unfortunately, we do have some folks in the church that are fallen prey to an old error called polygenism that says Adam.
That's beautiful, Eric. Eric says, who let Tim Staples talk about something that isn't Mariology? So the problem here is that Tim Staples now is going to directly disagree with Jimmy Akin. And mind you, Jimmy Akin has never gotten the position of being the boss of the apologist. He's the most senior apologist, but they don't let his opinion go too high, even though the majority of listeners listen for Jimmy, not for these other people.
Adam and Eve are just symbolic of a multitude, any number of people that are Adam and Eve. It could be hundreds of thousands.
Just to be clear, there are many multiple ways of understanding Adam and Eve, and there are many multiple acceptable ways of understanding it. Popes have called Adam and Eve mythological. That doesn't mean that they're not true. We have a both and thing in Catholicism. But even popes have called them myth. So what are we arguing here? Who are we protecting here? Why is this our modus operandi when it comes to Adam and Eve? Are you trying to appeal to the Protestants? Yes.
Thousands of them and such. But the church does not teach that. And what you want to do is point out,
So he's going to make a mistake here, and I'm going to correct that mistake, but we're going to let him make it.
It's like to go anyway to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, which is so good. And this is what Pope St. John Paul the Great said when he promulgated this wonderful document. This is a sure norm for ecclesial community. This is basically what the church teaches. And so
this is basically what the church teaches. You know what that basically is doing there, what that caveat is doing there? It's really saying this is not what the church teaches. This is a thing the church teaches, but the church does teach other things that disagree with this point. This is the norm, meaning the consensus within the community, not as in this is absolutely correct or the truth. So that word is doing a lot of work there. Basically, he's doing a lot of work there underneath the surface. So just to be clear, Catholics are allowed to believe whatever they want as long as they affirm that it's true. And what truth means can mean almost anything. So
when you have that
not denying it.
Kind of discussion, you always want to be armed with the Catechism. And I point out to folks that
And the Catechism is not a rule book for Catholics. It says in the Catechism's introduction itself, this is not a rule book for Catholics. And this is not to be used in that way. It is not purposed for that way. It is meant to be used as a reference book to guide bishops on hard questions that are not usually dealt with. It's supposed to be a guidebook for bishops to understand what the consensus was at the time of the writing of the Catechism. And since then, the Catechism has been updated because consensus has changed on multiple topics, including the death penalty.
The Catechism in section 390 says revelation gives us the certainty of faith. That's really important. This is strong language.
The certainty of faith, not the certainty of fact.
Revelation gives us the certainty of faith that the whole of human history is marked by the original fault freely committed by our first parents. And
again, that's only affirming the language used in the Bible and the language used both in Genesis and in the New Testament. That's what it's affirming. It's not affirming that our understanding of who Adam and Eve were are literal Adam and Eve with the name Adam and Eve. Because Adam and Eve, if they existed, would not have been called Adam and Eve. Even today, in modern language, Adam and Eve are not the name of Adam and Eve. Hi, Brittany.
Then there's a footnote there, footnote 265. And if you go down...
Read a Hebrew's Name Bible. Just read a Hebrew's Name Bible. And you will see that none of these people are called what they're called in the Bible. Happy Halloween.
To the bottom of the page there in the Catechism, it quotes the Council of Trent, that section that I
was going to do a Halloween episode, but I decided to do a live stream instead. The Halloween episode was going to be talking about what's the proper way to worship for a Christian or a Catholic for Halloween, because we always say the term, oh, Halloween's an acceptable holiday, it's a good holiday, it's not an evil pagan holiday, is what Catholics always say. But we never say the other half of the sentence, which is the proper way to celebrate Halloween is liturgy. I don't know any Catholic or Christian that's going to get an atheist or a Protestant to do liturgy for Halloween instead of dress up in a costume. So I wanted to do that video. I might still do that video one day, but that's just pointing out the hypocrisy of apologists who are just trying to get people in on the bandwagon.
It's mentioned on original sin, and then it cites Pope Pius XII from a document he wrote called Humani Generis, where he said it is not safe for a Catholic to teach that we have more, polygenism, and he even names polygenism. It's not safe to teach. And it also cites Pope St. Paul VI, from an allocution he gave to the Academy of Sciences, where he puts up the parameters and says, and he's actually exhorting Catholic scientists, saying you can go this far, but not farther. You don't go farther than acknowledging that we have our two original parents in Adam and Eve. But now to the other point, and I think Cy brings up an important point. You have those folks who try to say, science contradicts this, and it doesn't. There's no way that you can go back the hundreds of thousands of years necessary to discover some sort of, DNA lineage that goes.
The amount of different DNA combinations that it takes to have modern man means you have to have a certain amount of different origin groups for humanity.
All the way back. It's just not the way DNA works. And there's no science that disproves the possibility of Adam.
No, you have that wrong. There's nothing mathematically wrong or inconsistent with history with saying there has to be a first man and a first woman. And there's nothing logically inconsistent by saying the first man and first woman had to propagate for us to exist. That's the argument for a historical Adam and Eve. To say that Adam and Eve have to be the first two parents because it's consistent with genetics is not only a lie, it is a misunderstanding of what genetics tells us about our first ancestors. And it's a misunderstanding of evolution in general.
Adam and Eve. It just does not exist. So this is, my friends, a matter of revelation, and it's a matter of what the church teaches. It's a matter of faith. And we as Catholics can say, hey, we are open to science. So show me the science, and I will accept it. Because we can, as Catholics, we know the highest science is the science of theology. And second highest.
Theology is not science. I'm going to let everyone know.
Would be philosophy. And inasmuch as philosophy undergirds theology, it's the handmaid of theology. And true science never contradicts the highest science, which is the science of theology. This is why.
Okay, Eric, unfortunately, your comment did not pop up, but I do have a widget that seems to go around that problem. It says Satan put those enzymes in the DNA inasmuch as he put those dino bones in the ground. The evolutionist teaching to get the prayer are of the schools. To get prayer out of the schools, I guess is what you were trying to say.
Why the greatest scientists in the history of the world, at least in the last 2,000 years, just happen to be Catholic so often.
And how many of those Catholic great scientists would agree with what you just said? All right, now that we've shown the problem there, let's go on to over here. Hold on, let's fix this over here. Hold on, I'm going to go to big screen. I hope you all are having fun with this one. I hope you guys aren't taking this one too seriously, and I hope it's enjoyable. I hope we're not being boring. I hope we're having fun. Okay. So part one. Oh, it's out of order. Okay, let's reorder this. Manual. Okay. There we go. Bam. All right, part one. Here we go.
Please enjoy the first 3 minutes of my new movie, Am I Racist?
Thomas, it's okay. You just have to stay later for detention. You're going to write 300 words explaining why Kip Davis is wrong, but why also inspiring philosophy is wrong on the Canaanite argument. I await your assignment. When you get done, you can leave a little early, okay? But you got detention for being late. Oh, I hate that it does that. Stop. Stop.
Very heavy subject. And so, before I get into just everything that I'm going to...
By the way, this guy's super Catholic. This guy's not. But this guy's super Catholic. So The fact that he's going to say stuff that's going to disagree with Tim Staples and it's going to disagree with inspiring philosophy doesn't bother me at all. This guy's the most Catholic guy I know on YouTube. So
say here, just kind of a disclaimer, an opening statement. Let me just have Dr. Kip Davis introduce himself to the audience.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, Swan. It's nice to get a chance to meet you. And hello to your audience. My name is Kip Davis. I am a biblical scholar and a specialist in early Judaism and the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I do a lot of my work these days on YouTube and in social media. And I tackle.
So most of the tough stuff seems to be over here toward the back end. So what we're going to do is we'll do a little bit of the intro. We might skip most of the disclaimers, skip most of Kip's approach, though, maybe a little bit. We'll start playing longer portions. Maybe the conquest of Canaan, and maybe drive everyone out is where we're going to actually play it all the way out.
Topics predominantly related to countering bad scholarship, and which always seems to encompass bad Christian apologetics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just for the audience who are watching, you might be wondering, why am I like 4 feet away and Dr. Kip Davis has nice lighting? And it's really because I had technical issues. For those who've been keeping up, you'll know. I want to say some things up front for my audience, for those of you who are watching. First off, I know that Dr. Kip Davis and Josh Bowen have been kind of having a back and forth with Dr. David Falk and Michael Jones. And I just want to say up front that I've only had positive interactions with Dr. David Falk and Michael Jones. And this is not intended on my part to, launch a torpedo at them. Rather, because of the seriousness of this topic, the conquest of Canaan, on a moral and spiritual level, I think it's worth talking about it with Dr. Kip Davis. And also, there are a lot of things that I admire about Kip Davis. One of them is his moral clarity against slavery and genocide. I think that in these discussions, we just need to be blunt about the moral content of what we're looking at. And so I do respect Kip a lot for that. And that's why I wanted to have him on the channel. And also because I've seen his work, I've seen his interactions with, or his work with Josh.
I agree with everything Sona's saying right now, just to be very clear.
Bowen, and also I like Dr. Bowen. So, it's a win-win for me. And obviously, Dr. Kip Davis and I are not going to agree about everything. I'm Roman Catholic. Dr. Kip Davis is a former Christian. And I mean, we don't have to agree on everything. We just have to agree on the subject today, I think, and the severity of what we're talking about and the seriousness of it. And so, I don't want anyone to think that, Swan is now, an atheist or agnostic. No, that's not what's going on here. And regardless, as I've said on other streams, Roman Catholics, we don't have to make the same move.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just going to play a little bit of the intro just for the context. I haven't watched this one, and I haven't watched the next one. They're actually next up on my watch list, but I had to work a double shift today at work, so I did not get a chance to catch up on these. I did watch the other stuff, but this stuff I haven't watched.
As evangelicals and other conservative Protestants, I've seen numerous have to make the same moves. Regardless, as I've said on other streams, Roman Catholics, we don't have to make the same moves as evangelicals and other conservative Protestants.
And I agree with that 100%. I want to repeat that, actually, is that we as Catholics, or even as people who watch my channel, don't have to make the same moves as apologists and as Protestants and as fundamentalists or evangelicals. That's not who we are. I'm a Catholic. I'm open to facts. I don't have to be a Tim Staples. I don't have to compromise my Catholic understanding or my rational mind or my Catholic theology or my rational mind to defend these points and acknowledge that, yeah, there is some effed up stuff here. Yeah, there is some stuff that's mythology here. Yeah, there is some stuff that's anachronistic here. I can acknowledge all of that and still claim the Bible is true and inspired, because I'm not relying on the Bible to prove my theology. I'm relying on my faith. I'm relying on God. I'm relying on the church. I'm relying on the liturgy. I'm relying on the church fathers. I have way more columns of faith than just a simple, plain reading of the Bible.
I've seen numerous serious and devout Catholic biblical scholars who have just said, yeah, the conquest didn't happen. And these aren't men and women who are wishy-washy about the faith. They pray the rosary. They're very serious. They're very devout. They look at the theology and the teachings of the church, and they come to these conclusions not because they aren't devout, but precisely because they're devout and trying to take the.
And this is the problem. This is why I highlighted what Tim Staples just said, because Tim Staples is wrong here. Not as in he's wrong to think Adam and Eve are real. That's fine. That's totally acceptable. He's wrong to say that that taking a literal understanding is the Catholic understanding of the Bible. That is not true. That is 100% not true. And he's trying to sell. He's trying to get people who are Protestant to buy his product, which is his vision of Catholicism. And he is not the Pope.
Text seriously.
And Catholic Answers is not the magisterium.
At it and study the historical evidence. And I've even had Catholic priests who have told me, yeah, like Swan, what you're saying about slavery in the Bible, we learned about that in seminary. We learned that the Bible doesn't abolish slavery. This was a Catholic priest telling me that this is what he learned in his seminary. Or at one time I went to a spiritual direction with a very devout, serious Catholic priest. And he said, the conquest of Canaan didn't happen, right?
There are 5.9.
And again, I've had the same conversations. I've gone to priests to make sure that what I'm saying is correct. I've been in communication, not directly, but indirectly with my bishop to make sure that what I'm saying is consistent with what my bishop teaches. Okay? Tim Staples and Catholic Answers and Trent Horn are not the official spokesperson for the Catholic Church. None of these people are speaking for the church. They're speaking for an apostolate. They're speaking for a company that makes money from donations. That is not the Catholic Church. That's not to say I don't like Catholic Answers. I love Catholic Answers. I use Catholic Answers as a resource. But it is not the Catholic Church, no matter how many times they copyright Catholic.com, no matter how many things they own that says Catholic, they are not the Catholic Church. They are just members with no more authority and no more information than I have. I have all the same books. I have all the same books. I spent all of last year buying over 350 ancient texts of church writings. I don't know if she had a problem with that or if she was just saying she agreed with me. I have no idea.
Like the way they practice the liturgy, the way their prayer life. These are men who are, for the priests, these are men who are devout and they are aware of the scholarship and they are serious about the scholarship, the archaeology, the evidence, and they try to practice their faith with the integrity of not denying one or the other, but holding them both together. And so this is why I appreciate the work of Dr. Kip Davis, because there are times where we as religious people use bad arguments, use bad reasoning, and we need people like Dr. Josh Bowen, Kip Davis, or just other scholars to tell us, hey, this really doesn't work. And then we have to, as Catholics, as theologians, come up with better solutions that have integrity and work with the scholarship. And of course, if we, there might be points where we can't totally accept the scholarship. It depends on, for example, we believe that the resurrection happened, whereas a historian might say, I can't establish that. And that's fine, right? We take that on faith. But I just want to say here that I think a lot of the popular methods for dealing with these dark passages in the Bible are inadequate. And I think the first step towards a better theology, towards a better treatment of people with doubts or questions, is to take the problem seriously and look at it squarely in the face.
100% absolutely agree with everything that was just said. I'm going to let I'm going to let Kip do his response, and then we're going to flip over to the back end where the actual meat of this conversation is, and then we'll go to the next video.
And so I'm sorry, Kip, that I had to go through all that, but I think it's very important for my audience to know where I'm coming from.
That's a great intro, Swan. And if I could just chime in here a little bit, my interest in the work that I do on YouTube and on social media, my interest is I don't consider it religious.
Mm-hmm.
Zach, I'm very happy to hear you say that, but I want to be very clear. I'm not speaking for all Catholics. I left the church when I was 13 years old because of really bad social stuff that was going on between Christians and myself. And I didn't come back to the faith until I was 33. when I came back to the faith, I had a very liberation theology understanding, liberation theology influenced understanding of Catholicism. And it was only through reading the church fathers and practicing the liturgy of the hours for 3 years that made me become Orthodox. That's small o, Orthodox. So I just want to be clear. I don't speak for all Catholics. I'm not speaking for the Catholic Church. I agree 100% with Sona here, and I love Kip Davis. I've donated to his podcast. I've donated to Dr. Bowen's. I'm gonna call it podcast or whatever. I've donated to their live streams before, even if it's just to say a joke. So. I love that BM8. I'm going to call him BM8. I don't know why. I just decided. I'm going to call him BM8. I love that BM8 said clearly if you have doubts, that just means you're a child of Satan. Also, hi.
My interest, as I continue to try and remind people, is about a robust appreciation of the Bible, what it is, where it came from, how to read it, how to understand.
How I
discover the
No, don't do that. Sorry, that was not good.
who don't really know what's in these texts or are simply in denial.
Let me tell you how.
That's 2 commercials back to back within less than 5 seconds of play. Oh my gosh. Catholics' perspective range from James Martin to Richard Brown to Cardinal Burke. Yeah. And what's important to understand here about Catholicism is that it's a big tent. It's universal. There's multiple churches, multiple traditions here. And even within a single tradition, there's multiple approaches and interpretations. Dogma in the Catholic Church defines what's out of bounds, not what's in bounds. So you're allowed to have many, many interpretations. If something's heresy, that's when it's out of bounds. That's when it's no longer acceptable. As long as you're a Catholic in good standing and you're following what your bishop says and your bishop hasn't been excommunicated, then you're fine. So don't let Trent Horn or Matt Fradd scare you into not being Catholic if you hold a view that's not consistent with Protestants. We're literally not Protestants.
And I think this is the product of a couple of things. Those of us who attended Sunday school as children, we sang songs about the walls of Jericho falling down. This was a popular this was a popular theme or a story to tell in Sunday school, which is kind of horrifying when you get down.
Bless the Master says Catholics don't bother me as a non-believer. I feel like Catholics are often more, how should I say, worldly or open to other thoughts and ideas, more seasoned and not as defensive. For the most part, you can still find a radical traditionalist, and you can even find a non-radical who's very zealous and very ill-informed. So just because there are many good Catholics doesn't mean they're not bad Catholics. I myself have been a bad Catholic from time to time. So while I appreciate the compliment, I do want to say that we're just as flawed as any other person or as any other group. We just happen to believe that we hold the truth. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment, Master Blaster. Bless the Master. By the way, how do you guys know a very traditional scriptural Catholic scholar in modern time? Cardinal Burke is not really a great example, but I needed a non-schismatic conservative. I guess Scott Hahn. Okay. Scott Hahn is problematic, but for a very different reason. Scott Hahn is probably one of the best popular apologist in Catholicism today. The problem is that, like Jimmy Akin, his word has become gospel with a lowercase g, and that's problematic because it's not the church of Scott Hahn or the church of Jimmy Akin. It's the church of Jesus Christ, and we're practicing and reading one person's point of view of Catholicism, which again, Scott Hahn's great, but he's not the Pope. He's not Jesus. He's not the founder of the church. He's definitely not a church father. He's currently not a doctor of the faith. So maybe one day he will be. I wouldn't be surprised if Scott Hahn and Jimmy Akin are one day both considered doctors of the faith. And that'd be awesome because I love both of them. But I'm very much against Scott Hahn's Bible that's coming out. And I am going to review it. And if it's awesome, I'm going to be honest about it. And I'm going to say, hey, it's an awesome Bible. But I've read his New Testament. And while originally I was very fascinated by it and I was very loving for it, very loving of it, as I've gotten deeper and deeper into my journey as a Christian and I've become more and more vehemently against apologetics, I see the flaws of his perspective, which is it's all apologetical. And I don't need an apologetical Bible. I don't need bullshit and cells. I said I wasn't going to cuss, and there we go. I don't need BS and cells and manipulation. I need facts. I need to know what actually happened, what we can actually prove, and what we actually can't prove. Yeah.
To actually reading the text and actually looking at what this story is, what it's about, right? And we have these tropes that develop, I think, through shows that were popular when my kids were little, like VeggieTales, and their retelling of the Battle of
Hold on, I'm looking
Jericho,
at my
right?
work schedule real
So
quick.
it's people will invariably see the text through these deeply culturally conditioned lenses. They also tend to think through the text in terms of modern categories, as if this was a straightforward retelling of ancient history. When a close reading
turn on the fan 'cause
of
I'm
the
getting a little
text and
hot.
a careful appraisal of where it came from and
then we're
who
going to jump
wrote
ahead
it
when I sit back
and
down.
some of the issues that are inherent within the way these stories are told. It really confronts this idea in such a way that it becomes difficult to ignore. And I think this is where you get people who are in denial of some of these things. One of the things that I encounter with some
Toilet's
frequency
leaking. Give me a second.
is an effort to handle the text from a strongly historical perspective, operating from the presupposition or at least the allowance of a plausibility that this could record actual historical events. And I think the mistake that's made at the outset is to look at gaps within the text or unspoken features of the text and to depend on these as supporting a potential historicity of what's told inside. For example, and we'll get to some of this as we go through it, but one of the problems with aligning the retelling of the conquest or the narration of the conquest as it's presented in the book of Joshua and
Okay, so the water
seeing
has
that reflected in the
overflowed on
historical
the
and the
inside
archaeological
of
record
the tank,
is that there's a
and it's
huge
now
number
just
of
dripping into that
inconsistencies
little thing, but it
in
won't
terms
shut
of
off.
the
It's not
sites
overflowing
that
to
are
where it's
mentioned as being
outside, but I
destroyed in the
just can't
text
get it to
and
stop making that
actual
dripping sound.
evidence for the
Driving me
destruction in
nuts.
archaeology. Many of the sites mentioned in the book of Joshua as having been destroyed by the Israelites are just unoccupied at the time of the conquest. A good example of this is the city of Ai, which is the second city that the Israelites go to conquer in Joshua chapter 7 and 8.
I mean, technically speaking, if you go to conquer a land and there's no one inhabiting it except for maybe some like Benuans or something, and you conquer it, it's still technically a conquest, even if you didn't have to kill anyone to do so. I'm just saying, if I'm playing Rome Total War or some other strategy game, and I get to your area, and it's empty. And I don't even have to fight a garrison. I just take it. That's technically conquering.
And, you know, at the time when conservative readers of the text want to situate these texts, whether it be
Dr. Kip Davis should be a pirate for Halloween. He's good looking yet kind of badass. He's like the ultimate snowboarder or something, like a boss level. Okay. All right, you bastards. You want to be like that? You want to be like that? Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, who's cool now, huh? Who's one of the cool kids now, huh? Kip Davis and his stupid hockey? Look what I got. I got a Baker board. Yeah, that's right, Kip. I got a Baker bird. What do you got? Huh? Huh? Skates? Oh, you skate? You know who skates? Girls. You know who skateboards? Men. I'm not insecure. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's go. Let's go. I kind of want to hear the Moses thing. I know it's not relevant to our overall video, but I kind of want to hear it.
And what would we...
Please leave the ads on my videos.
Violence that happens before, you know, Joshua's conquest with Moses in the wilderness in Midian. I mean, would that fall under the... I mean, I don't think it would fall under the conquest of Canaan. What would we just call that period, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would be, and the way it's framed, the Book of Deuteronomy, and some of this appears in the Book of Numbers as well. You'll notice if you read these stories, the way they're framed are in terms of the Israelites just needing passage through these territories in order to get to the land of Canaan. So, you know, they approach.
See, here's what sucks is that I'm 44 and I'm a short Mexican dude. I'm super short. So let's just assume Kip Davis's average height. Okay. So he's already bigger than me. If he's 6 something, forget about it. He challenges me to a hockey match. I'm dead in the water. I've never seen, I think I've only seen ice. I've only seen snow 3 times in my life. And 2 of them were on vacation. You know what I'm saying?
Edom, and Edom says, no, you can't pass through our territory. So they have to go around, which is actually how they end up on the eastern side of the Transjordan, seeking access from much farther north into the territory, and are ultimately, you know, because they're rebuffed there, they need to fight with these so-called Amorites. The way it's presented in the text is these are wars predominantly of necessity. There's also some important encounters that they have with the Midianites and the Amalekites. The Midianites who, I believe,
I've been tempted to participate in some of the TikTok debates. I've even flirted with a few of the people who are out there doing debates, but they're so non-substantive. They're so shallow that I either feel like I would bore the audience or I'd be kicked off the, I'm gonna call it the dais, but whatever it is that they do when they tap someone away, I would just be left swiped. I would be swiped left, and that would be it. So I agree.
I believe it's numbers
31.
21 through, or is it 31? Yeah, no,
Yeah.
It could be. I'll get some of this mixed up because it's not fresh.
It's a lot of
on my
information.
mind.
Okay, let's go ahead and get to the meat of it, and then from here we'll go to the next video.
Let me just focus on this one here. Is it indiscriminate killing? Is it drive them out of the land? What's going on when the text seems to support both?
So this is part of the problem of the very complex nature of the composition of the Book of Joshua. I think you've got a melding an amalgamation of a variety of different traditions, because there is this inconsistency inherent within the texts. So I can't really get into that because it's a hugely complicated issue. There's a commentary, Dozman's commentary on the Book of Joshua, I think was published a few years back, 2015. It's almost 10 years old now, but it's really the most recent helpful one. He spends the better part of 30 or 40 pages just discussing the compositional problems with the Book of Joshua and where scholarship tends to be today. And where scholarship has landed today is on this idea that the reason you see some of this inconsistency within the text is because it's been compiled from a variety of different sources. Now, Paul.
And I agree with what Kip just said right there. It's compiled from a variety of different sources. It just is. And the different sources could have had different points in what they were writing. Some of it could have been, as Matt Whitman assumes, a report to the king or to some kind of rural record or I don't know, temple record of some kind. Other ones could have been written to the people, or other ones could have been to different groups. Then you compile it all together, and you have these different competing perspectives and different understandings of the events.
Paul Copan and a number of Christian apologists are going to take a more univocal approach to the text in an effort to see how all this stuff could possibly fit together. And
Deconstruction Zone. I'll check them out.
They arrive at that by suggesting that this is
TikTok, right? Let me see if I can find them right now.
Much of this is just ancient warfare, hyperbolic rhetoric. We see similar things in other ancient Near Eastern texts when describing the destruction or the conquering of a foreigner or an enemy. Texts from Egypt and from Assyria and Anatolia will often describe their opposition, their opposing combatants, as having been completely wiped out, and yet we know from the historical record that wasn't actually true.
And look, I'm guilty of this too. When you're answering someone on Facebook, what the hell? When you're answering someone on YouTube or on TikTok, you have to do the basic explanation for those coming in for the first time, for the uninitiated. And it can seem super repetitive, and it sounds like as if we're saying to the biblical scholar or to the apologist, what, you don't understand that this is just how the propaganda was written? Obviously they know. If I know it, and I know it from just reading translations of translations, they know it. But we're also introducing the information and the material to the audience, so the audience is informed.
True. So I think there's a couple of important things to say here. I would say I could accept that as an explanation, if not for the great pains that the text itself goes to communicate to the reader that the whole point behind a cherem offering is its totality.
This one?
Like, I think within the text itself, when you read these descriptions about how everything alive had to be killed, and then when they left, when this was not fulfilled, major problems ensued. Within the spirit of the text themselves.
Where are we at? Would you accept a Chinese-looking Jesus? Yes. So why would you accept your version? Let's make a fair deal. Cut the idols. I don't have a problem if Jesus is Chinese. My wife's Chinese. I also don't have a problem if he's black. It's just Jesus was a Jew, so he would have looked like a Semitic Jew.
I think it's very...
I mean, I'd be cool with a white Jesus if Jesus was white, but he wasn't white. He's a Semitic Jew from Palestine. I mean, there's not really much you can do about that. He wasn't black. He wasn't Chinese. He wasn't Mexican. You know?
Difficult to hold to this idea that this is just a rhetorical strategy or it's just hyperbolic. And then I'll say, even if it is,
your movie is really funny.
Somebody donate so I can get rid of these freaking commercials. I need money. Hi. You wanna talk to the audience? Okay, hold on. Okay, there you go. Talk to them. Tell them, what do you want to say to them? Uh-huh. Go ahead. They're listening. Look, I even silenced it so you can talk. What do you got to say? Oh, now you have nothing to say. Oh, I can't see anything. There we go.
Like, I think it's the other thing we need to point out here is that genocide is hard. It's tremendously difficult, history tells us, to undertake a mass slaughter or an ethnic cleansing of that nature, or to commit an entire group of people or an entire city to total destruction. It's just incredibly difficult. People are going to run away. Under those circumstances, there's going to be lots of people who do get away. Not the Nazis were not even 50% successful in their efforts to systematically annihilate the entire European Jewish population, and yet we still classify that as a genocide.
That is a fair point. That is a fair point. I don't agree with that point, but that is a fair point. That is completely a fair point. So good on you, Kip. That was good.
If you look at any of these horrific mass killings throughout modern history that we classify as genocides, none of them are total. But the intention's there, right? I think we make this description with regards to the motivations of the combatants, and in this case, with an eye to what the authors intended and what the readers understood. So when they're looking at these descriptions of total destruction, they're not thinking, "Oh, sure, but a few of them got away." They're thinking, "Yeah, everyone died," and
we'd kind of like, dude, what are you doing? Like, even if it is just rhetoric and hyperbole, it's getting into such a, we start saying things like really slaughtered them, or, I remember Gavin in his video dealing with the conquest of Canaan mentioned, how we talk about in our modern day speech, what is it like? Oh, we totally slaughtered them, or, we destroyed the other team. But I'm like, sure, like those are very small, concentrated within our climate. Like we can understand what that person means. But if somebody starts saying things like, yeah, and I went to his house and I burned it down, I killed his wife and his children, we kind of like, dude, what are you doing? Like, even if it is just rhetoric and hyperbole, it's getting into such a problematic territory that you just can't like say, oh, it's hyperbole though. Like, it's okay. It's like, well, no, even those words.
I'm going to be a little bit on Gavin's side here, not because I like Gavin, although I do like Gavin, but because I'm a writer and I write effed up stuff all the time. Like that's part of the point of being a writer. You're just not supposed to take it seriously. I mean, the audience is, but I'm saying like you as the writer, you gotta write what you're gonna write. So I'm a little bit on Gavin's side, only because I think the narrative is served better with the version of the story that we have.
Are still really problematic, even if they're just hyperbole.
One of the problems I have with, and Paul Copeland has done similar things as this, in particular with regards to his discussions of slavery, attempting to compare the language used within the Bible to describe slavery, similar to how we describe.
Truth, unfortunately, I do not have an open room today, so I can't challenge you directly. But I mean, I'll try to answer you when we skip to the next video. Okay.
Transactions of players between sports teams. These are super. I think these modern analogies are super problematic. On another, I mean, never mind I think the ethical quandary that you kind of get yourself into when you advocate for this sort of thing, just from a perspective of the function and the development of language. Languages evolve over time and they
Yes,
change.
they do.
And something that I don't think apologists who make these sorts of arguments spend enough time thinking through are just how these sports metaphors developed in the first place, right? Like the idea of slaughtering the other team or wiping the floor with them or annihilating them. This is language that developed out of ancient, more older forms of combat. So the meanings of the words at that point have clearly taken on a different meaning, right? Our idea of winners and losers now in the modern world has developed far beyond ideas about this in older periods of time and in antiquity. And then to take modern conceptions of that and attempt to, I guess, lay those over what's going on in these ancient texts is a big mistake.
Okay, this will be the last video of the night. We're not going to finish it.
Hi, I'm JT, and I made Result Hunter, the search engine for...
Oh, not that video. Okay, well, this is playing. Let's talk to truth. Let's go back. The early church was iconic. Jesus was a Jew, you're right, but he is portrayed like an ancient Semitic Levant. There is a reason why Judaism and Islam are iconic. Truth is an ex-Catholic. Romans Zeusified Jesus. Okay, let's tackle some of these before we get into part 2. Okay, so first off, you're going with the Gavin Ortlund effect if you think that the early church was against icons. It wasn't. Yes, there was a debate between two factions. The faction that won, that became orthodoxy, is the faction that thought icons were okay. But yes, there was a very strong faction that was against icons. And they almost won, but they lost. Hence, they are not orthodox, but heterodox, the word that we call Catholic. I mean, the word heterodox, the word that we call heretic. Catholics are the good guys. Sorry. Sorry, Pope. Sorry, I misspoke. Don't exile me, please. No excommunications, please. But you're distracting me. Don't look cute. Don't look cute. No, you cannot look cute. You're distracting me from my thing. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, next. The earliest pictures of Christ were made in a motif of the Roman art. Hermes, Apollo, and the shepherds. Wrong. The very first depiction of Christ is a mocking image of him crucified with a donkey's head. The next images of Christ that come out are actually more Hellenistic in sense. I've actually shown all the original pictures of Christ on this channel. Let's see. The Romans never Zeusified Christ. They did, on the other hand, reinvent some of their pagan gods and try to elevate different pagan gods that were not popular and try to Jesusify or Christify their stories, and it didn't work. And you can learn more about that by watching shows like Zeitgeist, which gets all the facts wrong, but at least acknowledges this kind of stuff. And he says he's currently more of a Calvinist. I'm not into the Calvinism. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah. Just like a methodological question first. I know, so Josh Bowen has said that, if you find one archaeological find that fits with a part of the biblical narrative, that does not confirm the biblical narrative. And I was wondering if you could kind of explicate that position.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just as a little bit of a primer on this phenomenon, this thing that we call biblical archaeology. This is something that really developed towards the end of the 19th century.
Truth, I'm going to blow your mind, but anytime you're imagining Christ, you're creating an idol in your head. The very fact that you think that an icon is evil means that you can't even imagine Christ in your own mind. The Bible itself, if you just want to go with the Gospels alone, are 4 different iconic images of Jesus. Each icon is a different portrayal of Jesus, meaning that each gospel is a different image of Christ. And it is in the confliction of the 4 accounts that we get our image of Christ, which is where we have to hermeneutically, logically make sense out of the contradictions and paradoxes between the Gospels, which is how Tertullian and Origen explain it must be understood. Yes, John Chrysostom and John Calvin and Martin Luther argue against that, but the end of the day, we have contradictions or apparent contradictions that we have to make sense out of, and it's through that that we get our image of Christ in our mind. There is no actual description of what Christ actually looked like. I know everyone goes to the bronze skin and wool hair. Guess what? That's a different image. That's not actually Christ. Allah doesn't have an image. There's actually plenty of Muslim art that shows Allah and Muhammad. It's just modern Islam has banned that, so they destroy those paintings and those drawings. But there are a few if you look hard enough. And you're getting way too far off topic for where we're at, Truth, so you can keep commenting, and I'll go back to addressing you later. But right now I'm going to go back to the video because we only have so much time.
In the early
And
part
I'm
of the
very
20th
interested in this.
century, archaeology as a discipline started to emerge and then started to develop as a, you know, increasingly as a more scientific field of study over the course of this time, and in no small part because of the Bible. Many of the earliest archaeological excavations were made by very devout men who were seeking to understand and to demonstrate the history behind the biblical texts. So, you know, the first excavators at places like Jericho or AI.
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus.
Too many commercials. Truth, that's an apparent contradiction. Either you are or are not from the States. You got to make up your mind. That's a joke, by the way. Don't get all grumpy.
To find the evidence of the destruction of mentioned in the book of Joshua. Probably one of the most famous of all the so-called biblical archaeologists, William Foxwell Albright, who was active in the 1930s through the 1950s. When he started excavating at places like this, and then at Hatzor, and I think he also dug at Arad. This is what he was doing. He was reading the text. He had the Bible in one hand and a spade in the other hand, and he was working to align these things to show that the archaeology matches the biblical story. So this is where it started. But archaeology over the course of probably the last 60, 70 years has changed quite dramatically as a result of what archaeologists have found and not found throughout. Then, famous Israeli statesman and archaeologist, when he dug at Hatzor, this is what they discovered: a city that was destroyed around the 12th century. Sorry, around the 13th century, right around the time when scholars think.
I'm not saying much here, but it's because I'm actually just listening. I'm just absorbing what Kip is saying. Sona seems a little bored, but that's okay.
Conservative scholars think that the Exodus and conquest might have happened, and the other thing that they found was signs of defacing and defilement of cult objects. So idols were defaced and cult places were defiled, which seems to align a fair bit with the I guess the Israelite theological ethos of Yahweh coming in and wiping out all the other gods. And then the city was Joshua 10 and 11, which are said to have been conquered and destroyed. Now, some of this, what we have are a handful of these places, like Hatzor, which shows a destruction layer at about the same time period, and some features of that destruction which look like they could align with what happens in the book of Joshua. But then you have other sites, like at Ai, that I mentioned, where there's not even any occupation. The same holds for a place like Gibeon, which is actually described in Joshua 10 as a large royal city. There's no occupation in the 13th century. And then you have a bunch of other sites, such as Debir or even Makkedah, where, I mean, we don't even know exactly where many of these places are. And it's not for lack of trying. It's just for lack of being able to find anything. And I think it's worthwhile mentioning at this point, too. This is,
to quote a very old expression, lack of evidence is not evidence of absence.
the same situation for those places that I mentioned from the book of Deuteronomy on the eastern side of the Jordan, in the Transjordan. So the cities, the two cities of the Amorites, which were said to have been destroyed by, and this is where it gets incredibly
truth. So a lot of Christians, especially Catholics, do yoga, but in the West, yoga, I don't know if you currently live in the US or not, but in the West, especially in America and Canada as well, for some reason, yoga has been stripped of its religious identity, and the positions are more about exercise. So it's not holding a single position for a long amount of time. It's doing different positions to gain strength and to gain flexibility. The meditation does have some more Buddhistic ideas than it does traditional yogic ideas. So it'll be more about emptying the mind, non-thought, void thought, that kind of stuff. But it's more about self-control, breath control, and it's not about worshiping the gods or sacrificing the gods with like the pain that you feel from holding a position for a very long amount of time.
Messy. Some of it works, but importantly, not everything does. And I mean,
then we say, oh, the whole Bible has been vindicated. It's like, wait, hold on. You know, this individual part, no, we
expect.
Yeah, because there are times where I think for a lot of fellow religious people, when we find like one find that confirms one.
I don't know if Zen is compatible with Catholicism or Christianity in any kind of way. I know a lot of Christians from the 70s and 60s and 80s do try to incorporate Zen, but I'm pretty sure at this point, especially now the Church Fathers have had a revival, Zen is not allowed in Christianity. I'm pretty sure.
Thing in the Bible, we then say, oh, the whole Bible has been vindicated. It's like, wait, hold on. This individual part seems to have corroboration, but in our ordinary lives, if somebody gives us testimony,
BS ruins everything again by bringing up Bush. I get it; they were a great band, but Gwen Stefani ruined everything, and you just got to let it go, BS. You just got to let it go.
And let's say one thing is true, we still want to know what about the other parts, though.
I'm just a girl. BS. BS. She's not just a girl. She's the Yoko Ono of Bush.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think I can think of a couple of good examples here of what you're talking about. Is let's say back in the 1990s, I think it was the 1990s, maybe it was earlier. A very famous.
Look, see what you did, BS. You've had a conversation. You forced a subject so terrible that it's cracked time and gone back to when Kip Davis and Sona were talking and have infected him. You're now making him talk about the 90s as well. You see what you did, BS?
Inscription was discovered at Tel Dan, written in Aramaic. From the king of Aram Chadzael in the 9th century.
Yeah.
And it makes mention there of the king of the house of David. And this is an extremely important discovery because it provides.
Look, you're walking 40 miles from the sun, man. You know what? Honest truth, I am not joking, BS. I honestly had the same thought as I was making that joke. I was like, I bet you Kip Davis was a Bush fan. I had the exact same thought.
Really, our only third-party.
And I don't mean Kate Bush. I mean the real Bush.
Evidence.
The manly Bush.
For the.
I said I wasn't going to make any crass jokes. I got to be careful. We want to be monetized. We need money, people.
Existence of a figure, David. Of course, many conservative scholars latched onto this and said David was a real king who really ruled in Jerusalem, but then extrapolated from that to say we can now trust all the stories told about him in 1st and 2nd Samuel.
Yes. No, you're right, BS. You've convinced me. Kip Davis is a huge fan of George Bush.
But can we?
Discover the new Gaza Learning Center.
BS, I need you to sow a seed, BS. I need you to think about your future, okay? You need to sow a seed. BS, you need to sow a seed. You got to understand that if you sow your seed today of 1999, you will get more in the future. You'll get more videos. You'll get more transparency. You'll get more that you need. BS, sow your seed today of 1999, and you'll get yourself more commentary. That's right. Sow your seed right now, and you will get everything you need in life. You know that girl at the coffee shop you wanted to talk to? Sow your seed today, and tomorrow she will talk to you. That's right. What's holding you back today is not sowing your seed of 1999. So B.S. Lewis, if you can please sow your seed right now of 1999, you will get yourself the conversation with the barista that hasn't been talking to you. I can see it. I got the message. It's coming. It's coming in clear. It's a hot cup of coffee. No, it's not a hot cup of coffee. I'm sorry. It's a mocha frappuccino. It's a mocha frappuccino at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the barista's talking to you, but you got to sow that seed. I really hate these commercials.
Which tells us that there was a dynastic succession in Jerusalem by the time of the 9th century. David lived in at least 100 years earlier than this. But this particular inscription doesn't tell us anything else about this figure.
Kip Davis, if you're watching, 1999. Support scholarship on a ground level. Support the small Mexican man trying to learn Hebrew. All he needs is 1999 to get rid of these commercials.
And,
how am I supposed to study with you and Joshua Bowen if every 5 minutes I have a 5-minute commercial? I can't do it. I can't study consistent Hebrew. You got to send in 1999, Kip Davis. It's got to happen. I got to see it. I got to see it. Sow your seed today, Kip Davis. Sow your seed to the future of academia. 1999. However much it costs to get YouTube Prime for 1 month.
The same holds for the archaeological discoveries at the so-called City of David, which is on the south end of Jerusalem, in the area of the city that's called the Ophel. There have been monumental structures and signs of extensive urban occupation and fortification and expansion at the time of the 10th century. And a common interpretation of these discoveries is to
that's pretty deep, Blaster Master.
That this is evidence of the building activity of David and Solomon. Is it? What do we have here? We have evidence for occupation and fortification, and we have these stories about these figures.
I hear the same thing.
Who are set in the same time period. Maybe But this is far from a settled matter, right? Like, this is where we have to look at the evidence from archaeology honestly and responsibly, but then, take great care in terms of how we're aligning these texts with what we read in the Bible.
Right.
And I'll say one more thing about this too. I read from this
When
very.
you finish this thought, we're going to jump ahead to modesty. I just want to see what that says. And then we're going to play out late date for Exodus, and we're probably going to stop there. We might do a little bit of Egyptian domination. I'm not really sure.
Very ancient account of the Canaanite conquest from the Song of the Sea. In that text, it mentions specific groups of Canaanites, of people who occupied the land at the time of the conquest. Agony grips the residents of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom are horrified. The rulers of Moab, trembling, will seize them. Importantly, we don't know.
What if I told you that you could block all ads?
We didn't even skip anything. This is unwatchable. Not the episode. The episode's great. This is too much. It's an ad for an ad blocker on YouTube, which bans you for using an ad blocker. What is this?
No evidence for the existence of settlements for a couple of these groups in the land as early as the 13th century. There's no evidence of occupation, extensive occupation and fortification for the region of Edom as early as the 13th century. Not like what we would expect as it's described in the Bible. The same holds for Moab. Philistia.
I'm going to go back and
There's
read.
no evidence of occupation, extensive occupation and fortification for the region of Edom as early as the 13th century. Not like what we would expect as it's described in the Bible. The same holds for Moab.
Truth. Don't be bragging.
Philistia, the Philistines, appear to be just kind of entering into and starting to control the region of the coastal plain, the southern coastal plain, in the 13th century. Now, what we do see in the archaeological record is that at some point around the 10th or the 9th century BCE, this sudden explosion and this emergence of a variety of these groups of people. This is where we see the beginnings of Moab. This is where we see the beginnings of Edom. This is where we see the beginnings of Israelite culture. Now,
that's totally acceptable. I'm going to skip ahead, even though I know he's getting to a good point. I just want to see what this is, and then we're going to do late date of Exodus. If it's not too exciting, we'll skip to the very end, which is Egyptian domination, and then we'll be done for the night.
The evidence can be interpreted in various ways. And for, let's say, that apologist who is insisting this is how it happened, they have to bear that burden of proof. And because you're making a more modest claim, you don't have to go that far.
No, yes, exactly. And that's why
that to me sounds like a slight against inspired philosophy. I'm just going to be really blunt.
Conquests, because the two kind of depend on each other. And
no, that's really deep, Blaster. That's really deep. I'm not going to go into that on stream, but understand I am reading everything you're putting out there, and me and you have talked many times before. But yeah, man, that's really deep, dude. That's heavy stuff.
If somebody, let's say, takes the late view of the Exodus, like Michael and some others, how would that shape the evidence? Could they? I mean, you said that in some instances it would make the evidence less problematic, but does it get them to the home stretch or not really?
I really don't think it does, because of the nuances within the types of destruction that we're seeing at the sites that we can point to and say, yeah, this is something that works with the time period, with the 13th century, because of just the totality of the data, right? You don't have Moabites and Edomites living in the area at the time, in the 13th century BCE, which are an important component of the conquest story. Several of these sites, such as Gibeon or Ai or Heshbon on the other side of the Jordan are just not occupied in the 13th century, and not even until much later in the 10th, 9th centuries BCE. This is
what does not occupied though mean? Does it mean completely deserted, or does it mean like those small groups of Bedouins that live in like empty cities, empty ancient cities in modern Arabia and modern North Africa and modern, I think, Saudi Arabia. I think Yemen as well. There's these ancient cities that are covered in sand, and then one day a wind blows through and the sand leaves and these cities return, and there's tall buildings and everything else. And basically wanderers will just move in and live there. There'll be like one family or two families to a whole city. Like it's spooky and it's bizarre. Back when discovery and history used to be reliable resources, they used to highlight these kind of communities, Bedouin communities.
Is a problem for setting the conquest in the 13th century.
Bedouin. I now say Bedouin so many times that I feel like, I do feel ad block should be illegal, right? I've said Bedouin so many times now that I'm questioning whether or not that's the right term for the community I'm talking about.
BCE. And then, I didn't even get around to talking about the whole problem of what's happening in Egypt in and around this time, right? One of the things that's happening in the 13th century, if you're going to date the conquest to this period, is that Egypt still controls the region. Now, I know some people are going to quibble about what exactly that looked like. It's not like, and I would agree, it's not like the Egyptian army just had the entire area completely occupied and secured. But we do know that there were actual Egyptian garrisons throughout the region. We also know that the rulers of a whole bunch of these cities, such as Lachish, Jerusalem, Shechem, Hatzor, these were all, at a minimum, still paying taxes and tariffs to the Egyptians. There is piles of evidence of Egyptian cultural influence on these cities. We have Tel El Far.
So how much did it cost?
Look at that, man. I mean, I didn't even skip to a new section. I just skipped ahead. Oh, this is painful. This is painful.
I got a friend who told.
Okay, let's skip ahead to the very end just so we can see if
in the
there's
south,
anything there.
and perhaps Beth Shemesh that's controlled by Egypt. I mean, how effective is that, and what is the result of that? I think it's an issue. I know that there are apologists who have tried to downplay what Egyptian domination or Egyptian occupation and control in the area means at this time, but it doesn't.
Why would you try to downplay that?
Seem to fit with the biblical story, which is a story of escape out of Egypt and the elimination of any sort of.
At some point, Egypt controlled Israel, so it'd be funny if the escape out of Egypt was just into more Egyptian territory. And by the way, I get how even that could be true, how it could still, if you're in your homeland, you feel safer, you feel free, even if it's still under Egyptian rule or under Egyptian influence. But I just think that's funny.
Sort of Egyptian control.
I'm going to escape America by going to Puerto Rico. It's like, that's one of our provinces. I'm going to escape America by going to... What's the island in the Philippines is owned by? Is it America Samoa? There's an island in the Philippines, isn't there? That's also American territory? At one point, Japan was American territory, and then we gave it up, right? That would have been interesting if Japan became a state. That would have been awesome. Okay, I'm now living in alternate history fantasy world. Let's get back to this.
It seems pretty far-fetched to think that even if this happened, even if the Egyptians were not in a position to stop an invading horde of Israelites from conquering and taking control of these cities,
a default territory? No.
Does seem, based on the evidence that we have at our disposal, like a stretch to suggest that the Israelites weren't at a minimum just walking into a situation where they were paying taxes and tariffs to the Egyptians, right?
Okay.
So, and very interestingly, I'll just say one more thing about this. There's some
Well, after this thought, we're going to go ahead and stop the video.
elements of the Exodus story in particular, which seem to fit with the reign of Merneptah much later in the 12th century. Which again, there are problems in terms of how you're dating destruction layers in the conquest.
I think there's multiple layers of dating. I think there's multiple influences in the narrative itself, let alone the fact there's multiple narratives within the narrative. The super compressed narrative. But aside from it being an ultra or superior narrative by having all these meta narratives strung together, I still think it's possible that an exodus happened. There just might have been a ton of minor exoduses that then get remembered as one. Because if you have enough people telling the story, it's kind of like the flood. You have enough people telling the story of a flood, you start thinking there's just one giant flood instead of like multiple little floods. Okay. Then we're all around the same family. Blah, blah, blah. Let's stop over hyper theorizing. Give me a second. We're going to go to the big screen, and then we might go back to the small screen thing. And then we're going to exit out. But I want to see something real quick. Come on, go down. There we go. How much is premium? That's what I want to see. Enjoy a free month. I don't want to enjoy a free month. I just want to see how much it costs. Uninterrupted music. Don't care. I want to be blunt with you. YouTube TV just seems super expensive and redundant if you already have Prime and other stuff. No. Don't give me that zero. It's free for 1 month stuff. How much does it actually cost? Okay. I was wrong. Kip Davis, I was wrong. BS. You don't need to give me $19. You need to give me $13.99. Here, give me a second. I don't think there's anything personal on there, so I don't think we have to worry. Yeah, it's $13.99. Restrictions apply. What are the restrictions? It doesn't automatically renew. That's kind of expensive, I'll be honest with you. You know what? Next month, if we're still doing streams and everything's still going good, next month meaning like 2 days, we might have to do this just to get around because it's so bad. No, don't. I don't want you accidentally showing anything. Don't do that. I don't like that it's doing that it automatically scrolls now. That didn't used to do that. I am not a fan of that at all. Okay. All right. This was a good night. Hope everybody has fun. I hope everyone's enjoying the new format where I'm cussing a little bit less, and I'm trying to aim at qualifying for the monetization that I fought so hard to be eligible for. I hope you all have a great night. I love you all. Let's go through everyone who talked today. Blaster Master 80, it was great having you on. It's been a long time since I've talked to you one-on-one. Truth, interesting conversation. Eric, great having you on. B.S. Lewis, it was good having you while you were here. I'm pretty sure you jumped out. Where's Thomas? I know Thomas was here for a while. Thomas, if you're still in here, have a great night, man. I hope everything's going well. Let's see. What else? Who else is here? Zach. Oh, your boy Zach. How you doing, man? Hope you have a great night. Thank you for coming in. I think that's everybody. All right. Everyone have a good night. Here comes the music. Talk to you all tomorrow. Again, tomorrow, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. It depends on what happens with my dad and how the trick or treating goes. Have a good night, Thomas. Later. Please like, please subscribe, and yeah, let's keep growing the channel. Share, 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 share.
You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. Looking for change, looking for pain. Pulling a mob, pushing a train. I'll never stop, stick to a lane. Pick up the pieces and go rearrange. I'll be the best above all the rest, put me to the test and expect nothing less. You check as I'm chess, what's happening next? Yeah. He got the venom, a tangible weapon, no coming in second. This life is a lesson. He got a new engine from pain, that's a blessing. New focus, no guessing, just bold and obsession. All in his possession, you got their attention. I'll leave an impression and take a redemption. Just kill no discretion. Your mind is a weapon. 11-11, it's time for progression. You could try to play, but you're never gonna beat me. Look the other way, what I'm doing ain't easy. Bloody hands stained from the people who deceive me. Muddy hands break through the chains, go free me. People like sheep move feet, hurt it easy. You don't wanna be fast asleep when they scheming. Better stand tall, ready for a fight, believe me. When they try the chains, you can say no, free me. So he's been looking for somebody who could save him, instead of searching inside for what they gave him. A strong will, strong mind causes mayhem. We could change the world, change times, rearrange them. Staying on pace, running the race. Life is a chase, I don't want a place, I wanna be first. Work till it hurts, dehydrated thirst till I'm in a hearse. High ambitions in the right mind can take you so far. It's like you lived a few lifetimes. Take off from a break off from the weak minds. They can stay soft. You can change lives, you create thoughts, never waste time. You got one shot, you got one life, better pop off.